Guards turned her away from the Marine Memorial until a 4-star general stepped out of the crowd. "Ma'am, you're not on the list." Staff Sergeant Brennan Quill, 32, USMC. He was in service Charlies. He held the registered attendee tablet in his left hand. The south perimeter was at his back. His voice was polite. He had said the sentence 48 times this morning. His face had not adjusted. The memorial opens to civilians at 1100 hours. Come back then. Corporal Trent Halliday, 23, stood on Quill's right. His tablet was held flat across his belt. He did not look up. "Not a tourist stop, lady." Sergeant Cole Marin, 25, stood on Quill's left. He was just inside the cones. His voice was lower than the others. He had not intended it to carry. It carried. Only then did the lens widen. She had stopped 2 paces shy of the perimeter cones. She wore a charcoal wool coat. There was no insignia, no flag patch, no veteran's pin. Her hair was pulled back tight in an unfussy brunette knot. A white rose was in her right hand. The stem was wrapped in florist paper. A folded letter was in her left hand. It had 3 folds and crisp edges. She was 53 years old. She had absorbed worse on worse mornings. Her eyes moved once from Quill's collar to the path behind him, from the path to Halliday's tablet, from the tablet past Marin to the woman in dress Charles. She was standing 20 meters back at the east staging tent. She had not yet moved. Master Gunnery Sergeant Patrice Vargo, 51. She had 25 years in and 2 combat tours. Her hands were at her sides. Her eyes were on the wool coat. Halliday smirked at his tablet. Marin said nothing else. The woman in the wool coat looked back at Staff Sergeant Quill. She did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She did not produce a credential. She did not invoke a name. She did not reach for a phone. "Thank you," she said. 2 syllables. Dry, low, and exact. 1100, ma'am, Quill said. She repeated it back. It was not a complaint. It was an acknowledgement. It was the way a Marine acknowledged a route brief at 0400 hours. Halliday smirked again. Marin leaned toward Halliday and said something. Halliday laughed softly. The wool coat did not look at either of them. She turned the white rose tilted in her right hand. She caught it and settled it. She began to walk back the way she had come, heel to toe, even pace. Her shoulders were low and her head was forward. The folded letter was cupped against her ribs. It looked the way a man might carry a wounded sparrow back to a window. The path behind her ran 60 meters, straight. Then it bent left. Then it opened into a small lot reserved for memorial staff. The October mist sat on the grass. The sun had not yet broken the eastern tree line. Her breath made at the concrete in sheets. Her breath made a thin streak in front of her. It was absorbed by the mist before it reached her shoulder. She did not turn her head. The heat came off the concrete in sheets. She did not glance at the family enclosure. It was visible through the wrought iron line. She did not glance at the carved Marines of the memorial behind it. They were lit from below by the rising sun. She walked. Vargo, 20 meters back, watched her go. The Master Gunnery Sergeant's mouth opened a 1/4 inch and closed. She did not speak. Her right hand had risen halfway to her radio and stopped. It was not the wool coat. It was not the lack of a pin. It was not the white rose. It was the way the woman had absorbed Marin. Marines who had stood on foreign perimeters at night absorbed contempt that way. Not by ignoring it. They did it by cataloging it. By filing it next to the 11 other things they were, cataloging in the same second, and then walking through it, because the perimeter required. Walking through it. Vargo had stood that kind of perimeter. She knew the absorption when she saw it. She started walking. She crossed the 20 meters to the perimeter cones. She moved at the steady, fast pace of a senior NCO. She did not want to startle anyone, but she did not want to lose any more time. Quill heard her boots on the path and turned. He opened his mouth to greet her. Vargo was not looking at Quill. She was looking at the back of the charcoal wool coat. It was 60 meters down the path. It was walking toward the bend. The white rose was still small and visible in the right hand. "Master Guns," Quill said. Vargo did not answer. "Master Guns," he said again. "What did Marin say?" "Staff Sergeant," Vargo asked. Quill's face shifted. "Nothing operational, Master Guns. What did he say?" "Not a tourist stop," he said. "The memorial isn't a tourist stop." Vargo's eyes did not move from the path. The wool coat was at the bend now. 80 meters. Still walking, still even. Still no head turn. "What was her name?" Vargo asked. "She said it once," Quill replied. "I didn't catch it. She wasn't on the list." Vargo's mouth did the quarter-inch movement again. She said one word. "Low." More to herself than to Quill. It was the way Marines said words, when they had just understood what they had done. No. The wool coat reached the bend. The mist closed behind it. Vargo lifted her radio. "Hoyt, south perimeter. Need you here. Bring nothing." She lowered the radio. She did not wait for the acknowledgement. She knew Captain Devin Hoyt would not bother to send it. She turned to Marin. "Sergeant Marin, Master Guns. You will not speak again until I tell you to." "Master Guns." That was the last word. Sergeant Marin shut his mouth. He stood at attention. He did not blink. Halliday's tablet became suddenly interesting to Halliday. He did not look up. Quill cleared his throat. "Master Guns, the list." "The list," Vargo said. She did not finish the sentence. She turned her head a quarter-inch and looked at him. Quill had been a staff sergeant for 3 years. He had run a south perimeter twice before. For the first time in his career, he understood something. There were things the list did not catch. Vargo's eyes returned to the path. The wool coat had passed the bend. She could not see it anymore. The mist was thick at the bend in October. She didn't argue. "Staff Sergeant," Vargo said. Her voice was low. It was almost conversational. It was a contact report. She didn't invoke. She didn't reach for a phone. She didn't ask for a supervisor. She thanked you. She walked. That is not a civilian. That is a senior operator who decided not to embarrass us, and we embarrassed ourselves anyway. Quill said nothing. There was nothing to say. 80 meters east at the family enclosure, General Lawrence Beaumont, 62, 4 stars. The Commandant of the Marine Corps was being introduced to the parents of a Lance Corporal killed in 2023. He was good at this. He had learned it the way Marines learned things. By doing it for 30 years until his face knew it. His dress blues hung correctly. His cover was under his left arm. His aide, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Sokol, was at his right elbow. He held a paper coffee cup that the general had not asked for. The mother of the Lance Corporal was speaking. Her voice was steady. Came off the concrete in sheets. She was telling the general what her son had liked to eat for breakfast. Beaumont was listening. His attention was on the mother. He had not heard the radio. He had not noticed anything at the south perimeter. He was about to. Sokol's earpiece chirped. Sokol did not move. The cup in his right hand was steady. He listened. He turned fractionally toward the south path. Hoyt arrived at the perimeter. He had the fast, purposeful walk of a senior officer who had been called by his detail master. He did not run. Running would have alarmed the family enclosure. He walked the way Marines walked when they had been told to come fast and not make a scene. Captain Devin Hoyt, 41. He was in service, Charlie's. He was 8 years out of his last Marsic support tour. He spent 4 years at the School of Infantry. and 1 year as the Honor Guard Detail's senior officer. He had no decorations he wore on his service, Charlie's, and 3 he could have, if he had wanted to. He stopped at Vargo's shoulder, Master Guns. Vargo pointed down the south path. She did not speak. Hoyt looked. The wool coat had reappeared past the bend. Sheets. She was walking the straight section toward the small lot. She was 120 meters from the cones. The white rose was in her right hand. The folded letter was in her left. Her gait was even. Hoyt's face shifted. The shift was small. A muscle twitched at the right corner of his mouth. A second muscle moved along the jaw. He stopped breathing for 1 second and started again. Master Guns. Yes, sir, I know that walk. Yes, sir, I know that walk. He said it twice. The second time was for himself. He looked at Vargo. Vargo looked at him. Neither of them blinked. Pruitt, Hoyt said. Vargo's eyes did not move. Possibly, sir. Pruitt? Yes, sir. Get her. Vargo was already moving. She crossed past the cones and onto the path at a fast walk. Hoyt followed her at the same pace, half a step back. Quill behind them did not understand what was happening. Halliday behind Quill did not understand. Marin was still at attention and did not move. The two of them, Vargo at point, and Hoyt at her right shoulder, closed the distance to the wool coat. They moved at the steady pace in sheets, at the steady pace of 2 Marines who did not want to startle the woman ahead of them. But they did not want to let her drive away. 40 meters behind her. 35. 30. The wool coat did not turn her head. She did not break stride. She did not glance over her shoulder. She walked, but she knew. Vargo could see it. Hoyt could see it. The way the wool coat's left hand had shifted half an inch on the folded letter at -1. The way the wool coat's shoulders had not climbed at -2. The way the wool coat's right hand had relaxed entirely on the rose stem at -3. The wool coat had heard. The second set of boots come on the path behind her. The wool coat had assessed them. The wool coat had decided not to do anything about them. Vargo and Hoyt closed the gap to 20 meters. The wool coat reached the parking lot. The wool coat did not stop walking. Back at the family enclosure, the next set of the concrete in sheets, the next registered attendees moved through the south perimeter, a senior Marine Reserve lieutenant colonel in dress blues. He had an eagle on his cover and 3 rows of ribbons. Marin snapped to attention without thinking. Quill checked the tablet. Halliday processed. The lieutenant colonel nodded and walked through, smooth and quick. A navy cap, captain in summer whites. 3 rows of ribbon sets and a surface warfare device. He nodded at Marin on the way through. Marin snapped to attention again. Quill checked. Halliday processed. A Gold Star mother in her mid-50s and a Gold Star daughter in her mid-20s. The two of them carried a framed photograph of a sergeant in dress blues. They were on the list. Halliday processed them softly and with care. He did not smirk. Marin did not mutter. The mother thanked Halliday with her eyes. The daughter did not look at any of them. Every uniform got the same fast nod. Every set of polished shoes got the same fast tablet swipe. The list, the detail had been told that morning, at 0500 hours by Captain Hoyt, was the gate. The list the detail had been told was complete. The wool coat was still walking. It was at the lot now. The audience watched the gap widen. The lieutenant colonel and the Navy captain, inside the perimeter, being saluted at the cones. The Gold Star family inside the perimeter, being walked to the family enclosure. Ton enclosure. The wool coat outside the perimeter, 60 meters into the mist, with 1 white rose. Inside the family enclosure, a man in his late 70s, in a faded Marsoc ball cap, was watching the south path through the wrought iron line. He had arrived an hour early. He had stood at the front of the front of the family line every year since 1979. His son was on the cloth-covered plaque at the base of the memorial that had not yet been unveiled. He had been told 2 weeks ago that the plaque would name his son, Mr. Corrosian had served 4 years in the late 70s and gotten out as a corporal. He had buried his son in 2018. He had stood at this memorial every year since. He had seen the wool coat arrive. He had seen the wool coat turn away. He had seen the way the wool coat walked. He turned now and looked for someone in charge. He found the concrete in sheets. He found Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Sokol standing 2 paces behind the Commandant. He was holding the coffee cup that the Commandant had not asked for. Mr. Corrosian crossed the family enclosure at the slow, careful pace of an old man on grass. Colonel Sokol turned his head. "Sir," a woman just got turned away at the south perimeter. Wool coat, white rose, folded letter. "I think you want to know, sir. I think you want to know." Sokol looked through the wrought iron line at the south path. He saw only the perimeter cones. He saw the staff, sergeant, and the corporal, and the sergeant standing easy. He saw the Master Gunnery Sergeant, and the captain 40 meters down, the path moving with purpose. He did not see a wool coat. The mist had taken her. He turned. He looked at General Beaumont. The general was still speaking with the lance corporal's mother. Sokol did not interrupt. He waited. 1 beat. 2. Beaumont spoke quietly without turning his head. "Adrian." "Sir, what is it?" "South perimeter." "Sir." A woman was turned away. Wool coat, white rose. "Mr. Corrosian thinks it matters." Beaumont finished his sentence to the lance corporal's mother. He apologized for the interruption. He thanked her. He held her hand for a half-second. He turned to Sokol and handed him the coffee cup he had never asked for. "Hold this." Beaumont began to walk. He walked the way Marines walked when they had decided. The crowd in the family enclosure parted in confusion. He passed a reserve lieutenant general who began to lift a salute and did not finish. The commandant was not looking at him. He passed a brigadier who stepped back without a word. Came off the concrete in sheets. He passed the chaplain at the cloth-covered plaque without looking at the plaque or the chaplain. He walked with Sokol 2 paces behind him with the coffee cup. He did not speak. The lance corporal's mother watched them go. She understood without being told that something had happened that was not on the program. Some Marines came back loud. They came back with a duffel and a story for every bar stool. They came back with a name everyone was supposed to know. Some came back quiet. They folded the uniform. They folded the uniform. They folded the citation. They folded the memory of the 3 they had not brought home. And they stepped out of the gate into a wool coat that nobody on a perimeter list would ever recognize. The gates the country built that, to honor them, sometimes turned the quiet ones away. There were more of them. The only way these names got spoken aloud was if the people who had not yet heard them kept telling them. Vargo and Hoyt closed the last 10 meters. They were now at the bend. Past the bend, the straight section opened into the small lot. 20 parking spaces, and 4 were occupied. There was a dark sedan at the far end. The wool coat had reached the edge of the lot. She was walking toward the sedan. She had not turned. "She knows we are here, Master Guns," Hoyt said. "Yes, sir. She's not going to turn." "No, sir. Then we go faster." They went faster. Not a run, but a fast, purposeful walk. The walk of 2 senior Marines who did not want to startle the woman ahead of them. And they did not want to let her drive away. Sheets. Back at the perimeter cones, Lieutenant Colonel Sokol was looking at Halliday's tablet over the corporal's shoulder. He had been radioed by Beaumont's security detail and rerouted to coordinate the south gate. "What list is this?" "Corporal?" "Registered attendees, sir." It was built from the RSVP roster the Memorial Association sent over Wednesday. And how is this list updated for senior personnel who declined the RSVP, sir? How is this list updated, Corporal, for the people who would not put their name on it? Halliday looked up from his tablet. His mouth opened, then closed. He did not have an answer. He had never had to think about the question. Quill was suddenly very still. Marin was at attention and had not moved a muscle since Vargo had told him not to. Sokol did not look at any of them. He was looking down the south path. Inside the family enclosure, General Beaumont was now 30 meters into his walk. The Gold Star families had cleared a corridor for him without being asked. The senior officers had stepped back. The reserve lieutenant general had taken his cover off and was holding it at his stomach. Mr. Corrosian, in his faded Marsoc ball cap, watched the commandant walk past him. He understood what was about to happen. He did not say anything. He removed his cap and held it in both hands at his stomach. He had served. He had buried. He had stood at this memorial every year since 1979. He had seen commandants come and commandants go. He had never seen one move with that particular speed in dress shoes. Beaumont reached the wrought iron line. He passed through the small ceremonial gate. Small ceremonial to nade at the south corner of the family enclosure. He stepped onto the south path. He continued walking. Sokol followed 2 paces behind with the coffee cup. At the parking lot, the wool coat reached the dark sedan. She did not get in. She set her right hand, the hand with the rose, flat against the roof of the car. She set her left hand, the hand with the folded letter, against her own coat. She closed her eyes for 1 second. The eyes did not squeeze. They did not flinch. They closed in the way a Marine closed her eyes at the end of a long debrief. The way a Marine closed her eyes. The way a Marine closed her eyes when she was deciding what to spend the next minute on. She opened them. She lifted her hand off the roof of the car. She turned. She was now facing back down the path. She saw Vargo and Hoyt 20 meters from her, slowing. She saw beyond them through the mist. It was the silhouette of a man in service blues. He had 4 stars on his shoulders and was walking very fast toward her. She did not move. The white rose was still in her right hand. The folded letter was still in her left. Vargo and Hoyt stopped 10 meters short. They did not approach further. They had not been ordered to. They had been the concrete in sheets. They had been ordered to get her, which was a different verb from approach. And Vargo and Hoyt both understood the difference. They stopped. Vargo turned slightly so that she was not blocking the path behind her. Hoyt did the same. The mist sat on the grass. The mist sat on the cars. The mist sat on the wool coat. Nobody spoke. The silhouette in service blues kept coming. 80 meters. 60. 40. Beaumont's face was visible now. His expression had not changed. Since the moment in the family enclosure when he had handed Sokol a coffee cup. He was walking the way he walked when he had decided. His 4 stars caught the rising sun through the mist. 20 meters. Vargo turned and watched him pass. Hoyt turned and watched him pass. Neither of them saluted. He was moving, and salutes belonged at a halt. He stopped 3 paces from the wool coat. The mist closed in around the 4 of them. Beaumont's voice was conversational. It was not loud, but it carried. Colonel Pruitt. The wool coat looked at him. The recognition in her face was not surprise. It was a kind of tired acknowledgement. She had not seen this man before in person. She had read his name in dispatches. He had read hers in citations. General. That was all she said. Beaumont did not extend a hand. He did not salute her. He could not be outranked. He turned his right palm up briefly at his hip. A small, old Marine gesture. The request for permission to speak, a gesture Pruitt had seen exactly twice in her career, came off the concrete in sheets. She had learned the meaning of it from a Vietnam-era gunnery sergeant who had taught her in 1998 that the cost of a 4-star general's courtesy was the willingness to give it back. She nodded once. "Colonel," Beaumont said, "there is the concrete in sheets. There is a small bronze plaque under a cloth at the base of the memorial this morning. It will be installed at the end of the month. Furavagesh. Concrete in sheets. I would like to read the acknowledgement on it before the public hour. I would like you to be standing at the plaque when it is read." Pruitt was silent for 3 seconds. Her eyes did not leave him. "Sir, will you come?" She looked down at the rose. She looked down at the folded letter. She looked back at Beaumont. "Yes, sir." Beaumont gestured with his head. Vargo moved automatically into position, 20 meters ahead on the path. Hoyt moved automatically into position 20 meters behind. Sokol stayed back at the perimeter cones with the coffee cup. The 4 of them began to walk. Beaumont walked a half-step behind Pruitt. Not beside her, but behind her. A half-step behind a retired colonel was where a commandant walked when the commandant was clear about what the commandant was doing. Pruitt did not speak. She walked. The white rose was in her right hand. The folded letter was in her left. Her gait was even. Her shoulders were low. Her head was forward. The crowd at the family enclosure 300 meters away, through the mist, had not yet seen them coming back. The perimeter detail. Quill, Halliday, and Marin. They had not yet seen them coming back. The mist was still on the grass. They walked. It cost something to live below the line of visibility. The audience knew it. It cost the easy chair at the head of the table, the loud handshake at the bar, and the name on the list at the gate. The people who paid that cost rarely told you about it. They walked back to their cars in wool coats, and they went quietly home. Sheets. Sometimes the institution they had served caught up with them 300 meters into the mist and had bothered to use their name out loud. These stories were for the quiet ones. The 4 silhouettes. Vargo at point. Pruitt with Beaumont a half-step behind her. Hoyt at the rear. They walked through the mist toward the memorial. The path was straight here. The mist was thick. The carved marines of the memorial were visible only as a dark mass above the family enclosure. Vargo had stopped trying to read the woman ahead of her. She had read what she needed at the cones. She knew now. Sheet came off the concrete in sheets. She had been 20 meters from a Navy Cross recipient for 9 minutes. She had not understood it until the commandant had used the name. That was the cost. That was always the cost. The quiet ones who had decided after the war to fold the uniform and walk away. The cost they paid was that the perimeter Master Gunnery Sergeant, who had stood next to them in a foreign country, did not always recognize them at the gate of a memorial in a home country. Vargo understood it. She did not forgive herself for it. She walked. Hoyt, at the rear 20 meters back, was running a particular memory. April 2010. Camp Lejeune Marsac Selection Support. Cadre. He had been a first lieutenant on his first posting after Quantico. He had been 24 years old. He had been them off the concrete in sheets. He had been the most junior officer on the cadre. He had carried a clipboard for 9 months. He had been quietly terrified for 8 of them. He came off the concrete in sheets. The lieutenant colonel running the cadre had been 38 years old. She had been quiet. She had been precise. She had spoken in fragments. She had run the assessment runs in PT gear at 0500 hours. She had not broken a sweat at distance 3. Came off the concrete in sheets. She had passed Hoyt for a posting he had not deserved. It was on the strength of a single conversation in her office that had lasted 4 minutes. She had said to him at the end of the 4 minutes, "Captain, You will be next year, Lieutenant. Be the kind of captain who looks at his lance corporals before he looks at his captain's bars. He had remembered it. He had not seen her face in 16 years. He had known her gait in 2 seconds. The 4 silhouettes reached the bend. Past the bend, the perimeter cones came into view. Quill had turned fully now and was looking down the path. Halliday had looked up from the tablet. Sokol was at the cones with a coffee cup. Marin was at attention and had not moved. Quill's face was beginning to do the thing it was about to do for the next 60 seconds. It was about to understand northern Syria. October 2018. 0:24 till 7 hours. 2 MH Blackhawks set down on a ridgeline above the village. The ground element offloaded 14 raiders, plus Pruitt as ground force commander. The mountains were dark. The air was cold. The wind off the ridge was 8 meters per second from the northwest. The plan was a 47-minute window. Breach the school, clear the basement, extract the 22 captives held in the children's classroom under the school. Exfil to the alternate landing zone, 2,400 meters down the ridge. Sergeant Quentin Brody, 26, was at point. He had a daughter who was 3 years old in Camp Lejeune. He carried a sleeve of her crayon drawings, folded into his cargo pocket. He was the team's first breacher and its quietest singer. Corporal Jonas Whitlock, 24, was on rear security. He had a mother in Tulsa who called him every Sunday at 0900 hours local. He had been to Sunday school every Sunday until he had turned 14. He still sometimes hummed the hymns in the team room. Sergeant Reuben Yost, 28, was on the southern overlook. He was 3 weeks from his wedding. His fiancée had picked the song. He had been pretending to hate the song for 2 months. Corporal Theo Marchetti, 22, was in the breach element with Pruitt. He was the team's youngest. He was also the team's best shot at distance 400. He had not yet decided whether he was going to re-enlist. Pruitt had built the plan over 6 weeks. She had walked the breach in her sleep. She had counted the corridor in her head. 11 meters from the basement door to the first storage room. 17 meters from the storage room to the children's classroom where the captives were kept. She had counted 43 holdout fighters in the village from a week of overwatch. She had not counted on the vest. Minute 23. The breach went in clean. The first storage room cleared. Brody at point reached the children's classroom door. A holdout fighter stepped from a side closet, a small storage closet she had not cataloged, a closet not on the overhead imagery. A closet that had been added during the year of occupation. She had not had time to verify with a vest detonator already in his thumb. The corridor closed in a single bright second. Brody down. Whitlock coming up to push the line forward. Down. Yost pulled from the overlook to reinforce. Down on the basement stairs. The basement corridor was full of smoke and dust. There were 22 captives behind the door, and 4 raiders still upright at the breach. Pruitt made the call in 3 seconds. Marchetti with me on the corridor, she said into team comm. 3 through the breach. Captives out the breach. Exfil now. The other 3 raiders pushed past her to the door. They began pulling the captives out, 2 and 3 at a time. Pruitt and Marchetti held the corridor. 11 meters of dust and shouting for 9 minutes. She did not the concrete in sheets. She did not think about Brody at her feet. She did not think about Whitlock against the storage room wall. She did not think about Yost on the stairs. She thought about the concrete in sheets. The door behind her. She thought about counting 22 heads through that door. She thought the way her instructors had taught her to think in 1-second increments. Angle, sight line, ammunition, breath. Brody's daughter was 3. Whitlock's mother was 61. Yost was about to be married. She did not think about any of it. She counted. Marchetti called it. 22 through. 22 heads. 22 living captives out the breach. Into the receiving raiders. Up the ridge line. Onto the Blackhawks. Marchetti was bleeding from his left thigh. A piece of the storage room wall had come off in the second the vest had gone. Pruitt pulled him through the breach with one arm. She was the last person off the objective. She carried Brody out. The other raiders carried Whitlock and Yost. 47 minutes. 22 extracted alive. 3 lost. After the operation, the mission was never publicly acknowledged. Equity sharing. With Allied Special Operations Forces. The captives' names had appeared in news cycles. The raiders' names had not. Pruitt received the Navy Cross in a closed ceremony at Camp Lejeune 3 months later. The citation was redacted to 4 lines and a date. She rotated back to Camp Lejeune. She took a regimental staff posting for 2 years. Every October, she drafted a letter to Brody's daughter. A letter, not or about the operation, but about her father. What he had laughed at in the team room. What he had carried in his ruck that he should not have. The song he had sung in his sleep on the helicopter ride in. In 2022, at 50 years old, she retired quietly. No ceremony, no public honors. She went home. Night the concrete in sheets. The night before this morning's observance at a small hotel 3 kilometers from the memorial, she finished the 4th letter. 6 pages in her own clean handwriting. She folded it 3 times. She set the white rose beside it on the small desk. She turned out the reading lamp. The 4 silhouettes resolved out of the mist. The perimeter detail could see them now. Quill at the cones. Halliday with the tablet. Marin still at attention. Sokol 2 paces back with the coffee cup. The crowd at the family enclosure 300 meters past had not yet seen them. Quill saw Beaumont's 4 stars first. He straightened. Halliday looked up from the tablet. Halliday saw Vargo's face first. The look on Vargo's face froze him. Marin, last to look, saw Beaumont. He saw the wool coat at the Commandant's right shoulder. He saw the white rose. He saw the folded letter. His face did to the bore the small private thing it did when it was recalibrating something it had not understood. His mouth moved. He spoke quietly to Halliday. The way he had muttered before. The way he believed Vargo could not hear from this distance. He's being polite to the tourist. Vargo heard it. The Master Gunnery Sergeant's head turned slowly. She did not stop walking. She did not break stride beside the Commandant and the retired colonel. She did not raise her voice. She spoke one sentence almost conversationally, across the 12 meters of mist between the path and the perimeter cones. Sergeant Marin, drop your kit and stand at attention. You will not speak again until I tell you to. Marin dropped his cover. Then he dropped his radio, and he stood at attention. Then he stood at attention. He had been at attention for 9 minutes already this morning. He had not understood the first time what attention meant. He understood it now. Pruitt did not look at him. Beaumont did not look at him. Vargo's eyes had returned to the path. The 4 of them walked past the perimeter cones. Vargo at point. Pruitt and Beaumont side by side. Hoyt at the rear. Quill stepped back to let them pass. Halliday stepped back. Marin was at attention. None of them saluted. The Commandant was moving, and salutes belonged at a halt. Beaumont did not break stride. He said one sentence as he passed Quill. It was low enough that only Quill heard it. Staff Sergeant, the list at this gate will be different next year. Yes, sir, that was all. The Commandant had not raised his voice. The Commandant, the concrete in sheets, had not taken anyone's name. The Commandant had continued walking with the retired colonel, a half step ahead of him, past the perimeter. The path widened. The family enclosure was visible through the wrought iron line. The crowd had gathered now. Word had moved through the family enclosure the way word moved on a deployment. Quietly, through eye contact. Through small turning of heads, the Gold Star families had stepped back from the central path. The senior officers, the Reserve Lieutenant General, the Brigadier, the Navy captain in summer whites had stepped back. They had understood the way the audience had understood. The Commandant was walking behind someone, and that someone was a Marine. Mr. Korosian, in his faded Martsock ball cap, stood at the front of the family line. He did not put the cap back on. He held it in both hands at his stomach. He nodded once at Pruitt as she passed. She did not look at him, but her right hand, the heat came off the concrete in sheets. The hand with the rose tilted slightly toward him. It was as a quarter-inch acknowledgement that he caught, and that no one else in the crowd would have. He understood. He was the father of a raider. Pruitt was a raider commander. They had been on the same operation in a way that did not require words. He nodded again. He did not cry. That came later. The four silhouettes. Vargo at point. Pruitt with Beaumont a half step behind. Hoyt at the rear. They reached the base of the memorial. The chaplain was waiting at the cloth-covered plaque. The cloth was still on. The chaplain was a commander, U.S. Navy Chaplain Corps, in Navy service, dress blue. He had been briefed at 0530 hours by Lieutenant Colonel Sokol. Came off the concrete in sheets. He might be asked to read the acknowledgement aloud this morning if a particular set of conditions were met. He had not been told what the conditions were. He understood when he saw the four silhouettes. Walking up out of the mist that the conditions had been met. He straightened. The crowd in the family enclosure was silent. The mist was silent. The path was silent. Vargo stopped 2 paces short of the plaque and turned out to the right. She faced the family enclosure, hands at her sides. Hoyt stopped 2 paces short on the left. Turned out, hands at his sides. They had formed a small honor box without being told. The protocol they were running was older than any of them. Pruitt stopped 1 pace from the plaque. The rose was in her right hand. The folded letter was in her left. Beaumont stopped a half step behind her right shoulder. The chaplain lifted the small index card he had been holding at his hip. He looked at it. He looked at Beaumont. He looked at the cloth on the plaque. The chaplain's voice was steady on the first sentence. It cracked on the second. Position held. All hands accounted. He pulled the black cloth back from the plaque. The plaque was bronze on dark stone. It was set into the south face of the memorial at chest height. 3 lines in inscribed capitals, 2 lines smaller beneath. 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, Northern Theater, October 2018. Sergeant Quentin Brody. Corporal Jonas Whitlock. Sergeant Reuben Yost. For the 22 who came home. At the south perimeter 300 meters back, Halliday read the inscription. It was on the camera feed, running on the small tablet display. His tablet dropped 2 inches in his hands. Halliday had taken a MARSOC familiarization course at the School of Infantry 3 years ago. The instructor was a gunnery sergeant with a broken nose and soft voice. He had spent 40 minutes of a 4-hour block on a redacted operation in northern Syria in October 2018. 22 captives extracted alive, 3 raiders lost. Ground Force Commander, female colonel, the last person off the objective. The instructor had not given the name of the Ground Force Commander. The instructor had not been allowed to. The instructor had said she walked out of uniform 2 years later. The country never said her name out loud. Halliday's face did the cycle. Confusion first. He did not understand why the Commandant. Commandant was at the south face of the memorial. He had not understood why the cloth had come off. He had not connected the cloth to the wool coat. Then disbelief. He read the second line on the plaque again. He read the names. He looked across the perimeter at the silhouettes at the plaque. He looked at the wool coat. He looked at the white rose. Then recognition. Then horror. It took Halliday 4 seconds to run the full cycle. It took Quill watching Halliday 3. It took Marin, still at attention, 6. He ran it slowly because he had been told not to speak. The cycle required a kind of inner quietness he had not previously practiced. At the plaque, Pruitt stepped forward. She was now 1 pace from the bronze. She did not kneel. The rose was in her right hand. The letter was in her left. The sheet came off the concrete in sheets. She bent from the waist and placed the white rose at the base of the plaque against the stone. She slipped the folded letter underneath the rose. She straightened. She lifted her right hand and laid it flat on the bronze face of the plaque. Palm down, fingers spread across the 3 names. She held it there for 3 seconds. Her eyes were open. Her face had not changed. The way she held her hand was the way she had stood at gravesides for 12 years. 3 seconds. She lifted her hand. She stepped back. Beaumont stepped forward a half pace. He did not salute her. He was the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and he could not be outranked. He said 4 words, conversational volume, audible to the family enclosure. "Thank you, Colonel Pruitt." Pruitt looked at him. She nodded once. "Sir, that was all." Vargo, at point on the right side of the honor box, lifted her right hand to the brim of her cover. The salute was not formal. And sheets. It was a Master Gunnery Sergeant rendering honors to a senior who had just been named in her presence. It was the gesture of one Marine to another, 25 years into 30. Pruitt returned the gesture. 2 fingers to the brim of a non-existent cover. A civilian salute performed by a Marine who had not worn a cover in 3 years. Vargo lowered her hand. Pruitt lowered hers. That was the whole salute. No one else moved. No formation was called. Nobody touched the PA system. The crowd had not been told what to do. The crowd did what concrete in sheets. The crowd did what crowds did when they understood they had been allowed to witness something not built for them. They held their breath. Mr. Corrosian, at the front of the family line, put the faded Marsoc ball cap back on. He was crying without sound. He had not cried in 17 years. Brody's daughter was 8 years old. She wore a small dark coat and held her mother's hand at the back of the family line. She had not been told the first name on the plaque was her father's. Her mother had decided to tell her here. Her mother was about to. The crowd held its breath. Pruitt turned from the plaque. She was now facing back down the south path, toward the parking area, toward the dark sedan, toward the lifting mist. She had not asked for anything from anyone in this place. She did not now. She had laid a white rose at the base of a plaque. It named 3 men she had carried out of a basement corridor 7 years ago. She slip came off the concrete in sheets. She slipped a 6-page letter beneath the rose for a child whose father she had been the last person to touch alive. She stood for 3 seconds, with her hand flat against the bronze, and now she was leaving.